2012 saw the release of Nvidia's 600 series of GeForce graphics cards, which also introduced the Kepler architecture, which was used in cards such as the dual GPU GTX 690 at the high end, all the way down to the GT 630 at the low end, with cards such as the GeForce 605, GT 610, 620, 625 and 645 all being rebrands from the previous generation. Some GT 630s and 640s were also rebrands of the 500 series as well. The GT 610 is what we have here today, which is a rebranded GT 520 based on the Fermi 2.0 architecture and uses the GF119 GPU. The GT 610, and therefore the GT 520 as well, feature 292 million transistors built on TSMC's 40nm fabrication process. The GF119-300-A1 GPU used in the 610 and 520 came with two shading multiprocessors, which are kind of equivalent to AMD's compute units, with each of these SMs containing 24 shading units for 48 in total. There are also 4 raster operations pipelines and 8 texture mapping units as well. Cache-wise, the 610/520 feature 64 kilobytes of L1 cache per SM and 128 kilobytes of L2 cache shared between each SM. This particular version of the 610 came with 1 GB of DDR3 memory running at 500 MHz, 1000 MHz effectively, on a 64-bit wide bus, although a 2 GB version was available as well. A core clock of 810 MHz means a shader clock of 1620 MHz, due to the two clock speeds being locked in a ratio of 1:2. So whatever the core clock is, the shader clock is double that. Technically, there is support for DirectX 12, although only technically, as the 610 supports it, but at a feature level of 11, which means that it lacks support for a lot of DirectX 12 features. All that aside, let's get on with the benchmarks. Kicking off the test for today is 2016's Doom, which is running here at 640 by 480 with the lowest settings, 16x anisotropic filtering and OpenGL mode as well, as the 610 has no support for the Vulkan API at all. And as you can see, performance is, well, not great. There was major input lag and it really was awful, and throughout the map the game ran in a sort of slow-mo mode, which made the gameplay very unenjoyable. Beyond that, there really isn't much else to say other than that the frame times were really inconsistent. The 610 managed figures of 18.6, 9.8 and 7.6 FPS for average, 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively, with an overclock not really improving figures much at all. It managed a stable core clock of 935 MHz, a 15.43% increase over stock, which equates to a shader clock of 1870 MHz. A stable memory clock of 590 or 1180 MHz effectively was achieved as well, which is far slower than what faster GT 610s run at. The overclock did improve gameplay slightly. Input lag was still pretty bad, but had improved a little, and the game still ran really slowly throughout, but was a bit better in some places, and the frame times were still really inconsistent as well. CSGO is next up, and this is being run at both 800 by 600 and 640 by 480, with both using the lowest possible settings and 16x anisotropic filtering. 640 by 480 actually ran great, although frame times did become inconsistent when turning the camera at times, which wasn't particularly noticeable. 800 by 600 though had noticeable micro-stuttering throughout, especially when multiple characters were close up on screen. This didn't really affect combat at all, but that may vary from map to map. Overall, 640 by 480 would be the better choice here, and it managed benchmark figures of 69.3, 29.3 and 23.2 FPS for average, 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively. The overclock pushes 800 by 600 past 640 by 480's stock performance, with average, 1% and 0.1% lows of 70.2, 28.7 and 22 FPS respectively. However, it still showed noticeable stuttering in upload situations with other characters, and brief but noticeable moments of micro-stuttering at times as well. Performance had improved noticeably over stock though. Frame time consistency improved slightly for 640 by 480, but still had micro stuttering when turning the camera. It still ran great and there were no other issues, and it had a substantial improvement in average frame rate at 83.2 versus 69.3 for stock. 1% and 0.1% lows didn't improve overly much. On to Crysis now, which is running at both 800 by 600 and 720p, with both using the lowest possible settings. DirectX 9 is also being used here, as DirectX 10, for whatever reason, locked the monitor refresh rate to 25Hz, which is real nice of it. At the lower resolution, the game actually ran great. There was noticeable texture and object popping throughout at both resolutions, and for 800 by 600 that was pretty much it as far as any issues go, other than possibly some very minor stutters here and there. 720p though, as you've probably seen by now, has noticeable micro stuttering throughout the test, but overall ran relatively well and was still playable despite the stuttering. 800 by 600 managed 85.8, 48.1 and 21.9 FPS for average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively, which saw a fairly decent boost in figures from the overclock of 99.8, 57.2 and 28.2 FPS for average 1% and 0.1% lows respectively. It still had some minor stutters from time to time, including in the latter few minutes of the test. 720p managed a far lower 40.8, 28.3 and 23.7 FPS for average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively, showing just how much the GT610 starts to struggle once you up the resolution. Averages improved a bit with the overclock, but 1% lows were nearly identical, and 0.1% lows took a dip compared to stock due to some stuttering in the latter few minutes which wasn't present at stock locks. Finishing off for today is GTA 5. This is running at 800 by 600 and 400 by 300, which was achieved by using 800 by 600 but with 0.5 frame scaling. Both are using the lowest settings with 16x anisotropic filtering in DirectX 11 mode. There were some minor but noticeable stuttering throughout the city at high resolution, where FPS was no higher than the high 20s. 400 by 300 had a better showing here, with figures up to the high 30s and showed no stuttering at all. Although the lower resolution, due to just how low it is, does cause eye strain, which I definitely noticed throughout testing it. 800 by 600 also had some minor input lag in the city and desert areas, with it smoothing out on the highway, and had noticeable micro stuttering when turning the camera as well. Overall, 400 by 300 ran far smoother than the higher resolution, but you will notice some micro stutter on occasion as the benchmark shows, with figures of 40.6, 24.3 and 20.2 FPS average 1% and 0.1% lows respectively at 400 by 300 versus 31.3, 19.7 and 16.9 FPS at 800 by 600. The overclock, which had to be lowered slightly to 925 MHz core and 1850 MHz shader for stability, couldn't really improve the higher resolution at all, as it still showed pretty similar microstutter at stock, although overall the severity of it is slightly reduced. The figures increased slightly, but that doesn't stand for much when the actual gameplay hasn't really improved at all. 400 by 300 is where the improvement is noticed with the overclock. There was next to no stutter throughout, and the frame times were quite consistent as well. It's just a shame that the resolution has to be eye-strainingly low to get an improvement. Granted, I am playing this on a 27-inch 1440p monitor, so 400 by 300 is always going to look like utter dog shit. Overall, the 610 performed about as expected in all of the games tested today, other than Crysis, which performed surprisingly well. 720p is kind of doable, but 800 by 600 offers the best performance in that game. CSGO at 640 by 480 offers decent performance and is quite playable as well, with some space to up the setting too. Doom was hellish, and GTA 5 wasn't great but still playable, although you might want to avoid 400 by 300 if you have a relatively large screen to avoid melting your eyeballs. But before we close out the video today, I'd like to give shoutouts to Patreon supporters ShadowInTheVoid and Peter for helping to make all of this possible. So everyone, if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment and a like, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more content like this. And don't forget to share the video as well. and you can support me in creating these videos through my Patreon at patreon.com/BenchyTests or through Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/BenchyTests. And remember, Ko-fi has a hyphen between the KO and the FI. And if you do decide to become a patron, you'll gain early access to all of my videos before the public do, for as long as you remain a patron. So thanks again for watching. Hopefully we'll see you next time.